Samuel 25, 1 through 22. We don't have as much time this morning, so we'll just kind of go quickly over the outline. I'll give you my outline. Number 1, Samuel's death. Number 2, Nabal's description. Number 3, David's directions. Number 4, Nabal's dismissal. Number 5, David's decision. Number 6, Abigail's discernment. And number 7, David's determination. So there's my outline for this particular section. Very interesting section. Let me ask you this. David is involved. Let's stop again and what's happening in David's life? Okay, he's running from Saul. And has this been going on for some time? Yes, it's been going on for quite some time. Has David amassed around him a large group of people? Yes. You know, about 600 men at least have come out to him, and we don't know if they brought any of their families or anything like that, but at least 600 men are around him. His last conflict or his last engagement with Saul seemed to be a positive one, didn't it? Saul's now gone home, hasn't he? And David, however, refuses to go back to his hometown, doesn't he? He refuses to go back to the palace. He stays in the stronghold. And so right in the middle of all this going on between Saul and David, we have this unique story about Nabal, don't we? Okay, we have this unique story about Nabal. So my question to you is this: why is this in here? Why? It really doesn't have anything to do with who? With Saul and David and the conflict that's going on between them. Why is this in here? A whole chapter? Here goes Jim. He's going to try. Okay. Okay, so all of a sudden we get a story that gives us kind of another flavor of David, don't we? Something that we have not really seen out of David up to this particular point. Any other reasons you might think? Larry?
Well, he had 600 men with him that he had to provide food and rations for.
Good.
And this is just one instance of him trying to get some resources.
Okay, yeah. When you're out in the wilderness like that, and you're trying to live, and you're running from the king, and you've got to make money, you've got to have income, you've got to have food for all these individuals. How did David do it? Well, now we get some insight into how David provided for his men at this particular time. Is anything going to happen toward the end of the chapter that's unique in the life of David? What? Yes, he's going to marry Abigail, right? What if we skip this chapter and we get 3 or 4 or 5, 6 chapters along, and all of a sudden we're reading about the family of David, and David's got this wife named Abigail? We'd think, what? Where'd she come from? Okay, well, God doesn't just leave us wondering about that. He allows us to see what's going on. Let me ask you this. Is divine providence involved in the life of David? Oh, yes. Okay. And what's interesting is he's involved in the life of David when David makes good choices, and he's involved in the life of David when David makes bad choices. Do we need that lesson in our lives? We need that lesson, don't we, folks? Regardless of what I'm doing in my life, if I make a good choice, God is there. If I make a bad choice, God is what? He's still there. And so I learn more about the providence of God. So there are a lot of reasons that we could give as to why this particular chapter, one that just kind of stands out in this wilderness flight of David, and it's very good for us to understand. What great man died? Samuel. Yes, Samuel. I wrote down this. Samuel was a reformer and a restorer of the theocracy. 2, he was the one who issued in the period of the kings. Some believe that he lived to be about 98 years of age. About how old do you think he might have been when he went to the temple? Yeah, 2 to 4, probably no longer than 5 maybe, okay? Because he didn't go until his mother had weaned him, right? So 3, 4 years old, that they didn't wean their children until later, okay? They're not like our society today. Didn't have bottles and all that kind of junk like we do, all this formula and all this stuff. So mothers, nurse their children for a long time. Now think about that. Let's just assume he gets there at the age of 4. He's been in the temple, a part of the priesthood. He's the one who formed the schools of the prophets. He himself was a prophet. He has now anointed 2 kings. Is that true? He's anointed Saul and he's anointed David. He's right here in that transition period between the judges and the kings, and all of a sudden what happens? He dies. Is that a big deal? That's a big deal, folks. The great men of God finally die. Okay? And it's imperative that younger men have the will and are trained to step up in those positions, folks. If not, we'll be leaderless. Is that true? We'll be without leaders. And if we don't have good leaders, then are we up a creek? Absolutely. Yeah, chaos can rule supreme. We now have just individual men who are implementing their own will and their own desires, trying to lead rather than having a leader in whom authority has been given to lead everyone. And folks, that is a chaotic situation. Okay, I think Samuel recognized that, and that's one of the reasons that he formed the schools of the prophets. Okay, to develop prophets and men to speak forth the Word of God. And so a very wise move on his part. Who mourned for him? Yes. And all the Israelites were gathered together and lamented for him. All the Israelites. I wrote this lesson down. Part of the testimony of a person's life involves who and how many attend the individual's funeral. Is that true? That's part of the testimony of a person's life. You know that? Who comes and how many come. Okay? I put down here, people attend out of love, people attend out of respect, people attend out of duty, and people attend out of curiosity, don't they? There may be other reasons why they attend, but people attend funerals for a lot of different reasons. But notice, all the Israelites lamented for this great man. Where was he buried? Yes, the Bible says, and buried him in his house at Ramah. Most of the time, or many times, the houses then would have their own burial plots for their family. Okay, did that used to be more common in days gone by? Yeah, people would live out far into the country and stuff, and oftentimes they'd have their own little family grave site there, and it appears that that may be the case with Samuel. And so he took him back to his house, buried him there at his house in Ramah. Where did David go when he left En Gedi? Yes, David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. And there was a great man who lived there, right? How many sheep and goats did he have? 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats. Now you might think, well, that's not many. Go get you 3,000 sheep and goats and get around them jokers. Folks, that's a lot of sheep and that's a lot of goats. You know that? That's a bunch. It's unbelievable. I find it interesting. How does the Bible refer to him? As a great man. A great man. Was he a wicked man? Yeah. He was a wicked man, but he was still a what? A great man. He was great with regard to his wealth. He was great with regard to his business acumen. He was great with regard to how he could build an empire for himself and for his family. He was a great man. Okay? Didn't say he was a good man. Just says he was what? A great man. I find that's interesting. What was the man doing in Carmel? Shearing sheep, yes, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Barnes tells us that this was a time of open-handed hospitality among flock masters. Okay? They would all gather at kind of a central location, okay? And at that central location, everybody would shear their sheep, and then what do you think they would do? Sell the wool to a merchant, sell the wool possibly to a wholesaler, right? Who would then ship it and sell it out in order to have it made into clothes and other kinds of things. So there was a central gathering place. Do we do that today in our society? One of the cool things about, the picking of cotton, okay? Everybody goes to the same what? They take their cotton to the same place to dump it, don't they? Okay, and so everybody meets everybody there. When it comes time, there's always 2 or 3 sales times to sell cows, right? And everybody goes to the auction, or they go down there to the market, and you got all these farmers down there and all these herdsmen down there, and they all get together, and guess what they do? They laugh, they cut up, they have fun. Well, guess what? Times were no different back then. There were big shepherds, there were little bitty shepherds, and they'd all just come together, and it was sheep shearing time, and so guess what? It was a time of revelry, it was a time of partying, it was a time of big bucks, we hope, right? Sheep shearers, hand shearers, absolutely, absolutely. It was tough, man. Like I said, it was payday to the herdsman. Okay. Number 8. What was the man's name? Nabal, yes. The name, Strong says that the name means this. Dolt. D-O-L-T. Adult. Kind of like that word. Brown Driver and Briggs says that it means fool. Now here's what I thought. What would possess a mama to name their child that? You know what I mean? Mary Lou said the same one who named his son Sue. That's pretty good. Yeah. Can you? Oh, look at my little dolt. Come here, little fool. Come here. Oh, who would do that? Oh, it's just terrible. Terrible. What was his wife's name? Abigail. Yes. Did anybody look that up? Nobody looked up her name? Guys, names mean something. My father's joy, or source of joy. Okay, she was a source of what? Joy to her father. She was a source of joy to other people. You like to be around somebody who's joyful? Better than an old negative person, isn't it? Everything's bad, everything's terrible, everything's awful. Who wants to be around a person like that? Okay? Not Abigail. Now think about that. Here's the dolt married to what? The joy. My question is, how did they get together? You know, unreal, unbelievable. How is Nabal's wife described? And she was a woman of good understanding and a beautiful countenance. She was smart and she was gorgeous, folks. And she was what? A joy to be around. Nabal was lucky. Wasn't he? Now I asked the question, how'd they come together? How do you think they probably came together? What is Nabal? Yeah, Nabal's a big man. He's a big businessman, right? very wealthy man. And back then they did a lot of arranged marriages. Well, guess what a daddy wants for his daughter? Yeah, a good life. A man that's going to provide for her well. And so they probably had an arranged marriage, and Abigail gets married to Nabal, and she probably had very little say in the contracting of that particular marriage. And that was not uncommon at all. I just wrote down here, Abigail was a woman who was beautiful on the inside and outside. Have you ever met some folks like that? You know, I could show you several women who are that way. Just pretty on the outside, and you just hope that what? They're just as pretty on the inside. You get to know them, and they are. Okay? And that's a wonderful thing. Have you ever met a woman who is beautiful on the outside and terrible on the inside? Oh, man. You know, don't care how pretty she is. Once she opens her mouth, you just go, ugh. Don't want to be around that woman. I don't care how pretty she is. Okay? Abigail was both. Now, what? That's good, but it's a little hard. I'm just talking from a man's perspective, okay? That's what they always, she has a good personality. Okay, don't want to meet her. Huh? All right, so we have a beautiful description of Abigail. How is old Nabal described? What two words? Curlish and evil. Was it curlish talking about his hair? No? That little word curlish. Rude and selfish. Okay, good. Strong defined it as severe. And then Brown, Driver, and Briggs said hard, cruel, severe, obstinate, fierce, difficult, stubborn, stiff-necked, not nice. It probably explains why he did so well in the business world, doesn't it? Guys, business is tough, can it be? And, you know, there's a lot of business people who are ruthless out there, and unless you become somewhat that way, okay? But he was also just a very stern man. Jeannie? Harsh, yes, a harsh individual. So, and we've all run into one like that, haven't we? Harsh individuals, just kind of stubborn and obstinate type individuals. The little word evil, bad, evil, disagreeable, malignant, unpleasant, sad, unhappy. Now just think about that. We got this beautiful woman who's very smart, very joyful, married to this fool who is just as stern and obstinate and self-willed as he can be. Man, I bet Abigail scratched her head many nights and said, "Why, Dad? Why this guy?"
She probably helped him, though, to get to be a great man.
You got to have a good woman, don't you? Got to have a good woman.
Well, she got him out of trouble with David.
Yep. You see, he goes too fast. He goes too fast. Man. What was the house of Nabal's lineage? Caleb. Caleb. Anybody remember Caleb? Who is this Caleb? Yeah, remember Caleb? Joshua and Caleb. They were the two spies who came back and said, yes, we can take the land. Now think about that. He hails from the lineage of a great, faithful warrior for the Almighty God, doesn't he? In fact, Caleb goes in and requests a specific place in the inheritance, and he drives out the enemy, and he's given that particular mountain. Even in his old age, he was doing that kind of stuff. And here's a man who has a wonderful lineage, and I just wrote down another lesson, folks. One's lineage does not guarantee one's character. Each person chooses the type of person he or she will become. I don't care who your daddy is. You know, you would think that if a person is of this particular lineage, that he'd take on the qualities, especially if they're positive, of that lineage, wouldn't you? Doesn't necessarily hold water, does it? Okay. And guys, what's interesting is you can see that in the kings of Israel and Judah, can't you? One king will be a great king, a faithful king. His son comes along, becomes just an evil, wicked individual. He'll have an evil, wicked dad. The son will come along, and guess what? he'll be a good king. Okay? All of us make our own choices. Lineage does not guarantee character. What did David hear about Nabal? That he was shearing his sheep. Okay? What did David send to Nabal? Oh, you kidding? Me too. That's what I said. David sent out how many young men? 10 young men. And David said unto the young men, get you up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in, watch this, my name. Folks, twice David exhorts these men to speak in what? His name. Now, let me ask you this. Do we read anywhere in the biblical text where David and Nabal make an agreement for David to protect Nabal's sheep? You don't read of any of that. Okay? Now, remember, why is David sending these young men to Nabal? To get help. Okay? But it's more than just to get help. It's, we've provided a service for you, now you owe us. Right? Now, Nabal probably was not involved in that agreement. Okay? Because Nabal was a what? A great man. Folks, he wasn't out there, tending to those flocks. Who did he have tending to the flocks? Herdsmen, right? Shepherds. And usually what he would have is a single head herdsman. And I bet you David made an agreement with that head herdsman, right? Now, when you become a head herdsman, do you have delegated authority given to you by your boss? Yeah, Nabal gave this man authority. You get out there in the wilderness and you need help and you find somebody who can help you protect my flocks, keep away the bears, the wolves, the enemies, the thieves, then you agree with him and we'll pay that man. So the head herdsman probably made an agreement with David. And now it's time to what? Now it's time to pay up, right? I'm flying through this, okay? Forget the questions. You can quit looking at questions anymore, right? Because we only got 2 minutes. Okay, so the men go, right? Do they go in David's name? Yes. Okay. Apparently David thinks his name's what? Known. Not only, it is known, because even Nabal knows it, but he also thinks it's what? Respected, honored, right? In the nation. He assumes that, right? I'm coming in David's name. Well, they get to Nabal, and Nabal listens to them, and then what does Nabal do? He expresses his churlishness, doesn't he? Who is this David? And then what does he say about him? And Nabal answered David's servants and said, who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? Watch this. There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. What did he accuse David of doing? Being unfaithful to Saul, in revolt against Saul. Break away from the master. Okay? David, I'm not paying you. I know who you are. Now, for a businessman as great as Nabal, would that be a pretty wise move to stay with the king? Think about this, folks. Okay? I mean, he's probably got some relationships with who? With Saul. At least with Saul's government, right? Be able to go certain places, take his flock certain places, get some best money, get the good business deals, whatever. He may have known Saul fairly well, has at least had some interactions with him. And so now it's David or who? Saul. Who are you? Who's David? Who's Jesse? You're just a little peon who's done what? Broken off from the king. And so he refused to pay him, right? So the men go back and they tell David, and what does David say? And he may have said it about like that. Okay, put on your swords, boys. And did David gird on his sword? Oh yes, guys, warfare is about to ensue. Okay. Very good. So, he was of the same tribe as who? Same tribe as David, wasn't he? Okay, so these tribal affiliations didn't always mean a lot either, did they? So he refused to pay him. David's now been out of shape, isn't he? And he's about to go strike against this particular man. Boy, we're flying through this. How many did he take with him to do it? 400 men with their swords on, folks. This is about to get pretty bad, isn't it? It's about to get pretty bad. How did the men describe Nabal's actions? The Bible says, and he railed on them. See, it expresses that what? That stubborn, obstinate nature. And so David knows that I've run into a tough cookie, and in order to take care of a tough cookie, you have to take tough action. And folks, off he goes, he and 400 men to destroy a household. Okay? Was he going to destroy everybody? All the men, right? All the men. And so that ends our... Oh yes, happens all the time, doesn't it? Yeah, people let one man, people get mad at one man, two men, and